Hello, everybody. I hope you are enjoying your meal. I'd like to get started with the program part of our evening. We are privileged tonight to have as the moderator for our awards portion of our evening, thank you all, Kellie, Meiman, Hock from McClarty & Associates. Woo! Kellie is our moderator for the evening. She has taken our theme to heart. We are delighted to have her here. She'll be handling things for the next hour or so, and we promise to have you all out of here by 9 o'clock. Kellie?
Thank you, Ken. And it's a pleasure to be your MC here tonight, especially on the occasion of WITA's 35th anniversary. The theme Back to the Future got me particularly excited. As you might have noticed, my own prom was 30 years ago, but somehow writing high school theme papers about semiconductors and Super 301 doesn't get you a lot of dates in Omaha, Nebraska. So for those of you playing trade prom bingo tonight, I wanted to be certain that you'd updated your bingo cards from last year. So take your pens, scratch out TPP, and place instead bilateral. Be sure there's a place for section 232, and just in case, you might want to put a block there for voluntary export restraints. Last but not least, ensure that your card includes the words domestic jobs. All right, with that housekeeping out of the way, I have the honor to introduce Congresswoman Suzan DelBene, proudly representing Washington's 1st Congressional District, spanning from the northeast of King County to the Canadian border. Congresswoman DelBene has distinguished herself by bringing her personal experience as a successful technology entrepreneur and a business leader to Congress. No one understands the importance of trade more than congressional leaders with constituents at the borders. And her work on the House Ways and Means Committee means that she has the opportunity to positively impact the trade debate every single day. Her full bio is in the program, but we are delighted, Congresswoman, to have you here to introduce our first WITA honoree of the evening. Ladies and gentlemen, Congresswoman DelBene.
Good evening. I'm feeling underdressed. I'll have to, make sure next time I get the appropriate briefing on what to wear. But it's great to be here tonight. I feel the need to say bilateral or something for those folks playing bingo out there. But it's truly an honor and great to be here presenting my colleague and friend, Congressman Rick Larsen, with the very well-earned Congressional Leadership Award. So I have the honor of representing Washington State's 1st Congressional District. And a good chunk of my district actually used to be Rick Larsen's district when we went through redistricting. And so we share a lot of areas in what I call the better Washington, which is Washington State, because it is right now, weather-wise, it's truly the better Washington. So when you see us West Coast folks complaining about the humidity, you remember that we're just not used to it. But in Washington State, trade truly means jobs. In 2016, our state exported nearly $80 billion of goods, and my district, as well as Rick's, are in the top 10 most trade-dependent districts in the country. Washington State is the most trade-dependent state in the country, and 4 of the top 10 districts are in Washington State. So trade's a very important issue, and Rick definitely knows a thing or two about trade. And also because we're located on the Pacific Coast, much of our state's trading is done with Asian countries. China is Washington State's top export market, and Japan and South Korea are both in the top 5. Together, these 3 countries accounted for over $27 billion in exports last year for our state. So developing strong relationships with these countries is vital to the economic success of our state, but also of our country. And Rick knows how critical trade with Asia is to our future economic growth. You'd be hard-pressed, in fact, to find another member of Congress who has dedicated so much time to the region. He just returned from Korea, New Zealand, Australia, and Vietnam, so he might be a little jet-lagged. He also went to Korea, Japan, and Singapore earlier this year. He's been to China 10 times, and I was able to join him most recently on one of those trips last year. As you could guess, we talked about trade. He's also been a champion of the State Trade Expansion Program, STEP, which aims to increase the number of small business exporters and sales of Made in America goods and services. Locally, his district export promotion program helps connect small businesses with federal, state, and local resources so they can sell goods and services overseas. These efforts are extremely important as small, medium-sized businesses account for 90% of Washington's goods exporters. So for those of you who don't know Rick Larsen, he's rather shy. I hear the laughter out there already. You never know where he stands on any issue. He's often very afraid to get to the point. And of course, those of you who know Rick are the ones laughing here. You know that I'm definitely kidding. Just check out his Twitter feed anytime now. I'm pretty sure folks will be on there right away. Last Congress, he and I were 2 of the 28 House Democrats to support Trade Promotion Authority. And even when it's been very hard, Rick has been a tireless, vocal advocate for trade policies that support America's working families and open up new markets for American products. He knows the United States, bingo, I got someone's bingo there. He knows the United States cannot close our doors and remain a global leader, and he's never been scared to say that. So for our nation to maintain its standing as a leader in the global economy, we must do our part to keep the trade conversation going. And I can guarantee that Rick Larsen, the opinionated Rick Larsen, will be at the forefront of that effort. So please join me in welcoming Rick Larsen and congratulating him on this well-deserved award. Speech.
Thanks, Susan. So I'm sorry, I did not know this is a trade prom. So for 9 o'clock to 11, we set up the Rick Larsen Spodie out in the back. For those who are young enough to know what that is, I guess. Jeff, you'll have Coke. So I want to thank Susan for the introduction, and I want to thank WITA for the honor on trade. Susan was going through this list of countries that I visited this year, and I'd appreciate if no one told my constituents. I appreciate that very much. It'd be nice if you did that. Now I do want to thank WITA. I thought I was getting a public television award tonight, but just wondering how many times you've heard that joke. Probably never, because the people are smart enough not to tell it. So, over the last several years, the most prestigious honor I've actually received was from Roll Call. I've been a consistent member of what Roll Call calls the Obscure Caucus. Members of Congress like Andrew Crenshaw, Ed Pastor in the past, Jerry Costello, others, who really don't get a lot of attention, presumably for not doing much, but they're nice enough to go through the list of things that these Obscure Caucus members have done, and it's nice to break out of that a little bit on the right issues, and trade is certainly one of them. So I do want to thank you all for the recognition. And Susan said this, in Washington State, trade means jobs. It's pretty simple for us in the Northwest. About 40% of all jobs in the state depend on trade. In Snohomish County, which Suzan and I both represent, 60% of all jobs are related to trade. Not indirectly, these are direct jobs related to trade. So workers in my district, as an example, build a lot of airplanes, and those planes are mostly sold to foreign air carriers, which benefits the U.S. trade balance. So it's important to me, as we look at trade policy right now, that the administration gets it right and acknowledges the benefits that come with trade for the United States and for my district specifically. It's why I'm the co-chair of the Trade Task Force for the New Democratic Coalition. The New Democrats consist of about 61 Democrats, thanks for the shout out back there, that generally support trade policy. It's an essential group on Capitol Hill to get trade deals done. And what it means for my state is high-paying jobs at home. It means interconnectivity across the globe, and it means investing in the next generation of the workforce through access to higher education and apprenticeships in manufacturing and in high-demand fields. You can't have one without the other. It's a little like the Frank Sinatra song, Love and Marriage, right? You can't have one without the other. You have to have a domestic policy that supports your trade policy, and your trade policy needs to support your domestic policy. Domestic jobs, bingo, anyone, okay. But I also believe that the U.S. should lead the world in setting the rules on trade and not delegate that to others or to let others lead by our neglect. Because trade is a powerful, big applause line at home too, by the way. Trade is a powerful tool in our diplomatic toolkit. Trade can be thought about in terms of tariffs, as frankly this administration seems to be doing, or it can be thought of as setting the rules of the debate, the rules on labor, the rules for small business, the rules on digital trade, environment, on SOEs. All these are opportunities for the United States in setting the rules in trade, but there seems to be some ambiguity in this administration on trade, which I hope we get some more clarity on. Last week we witnessed the second threat to pull out of NAFTA. Ending NAFTA will not benefit anyone. It will not bring jobs that have been lost back to the U.S. It will hurt jobs. Yeah. As Suzan noted, I'll tell you what I think if you just ask. It will just hurt jobs that we've already gained and hurt relations with our neighbors and closest allies. And I hope the administration can take a more strategic approach to trade. However, to date, it's currently unclear who will lead trade negotiations, whether that's Commerce or USTR, and I believe it's important to keep USTR as the diplomatic arm on trade. I only had 4 to 5 minutes, and I didn't know these were actually applause lines in a speech on trade. I thought I was just saying things I thought, but Jeff, you gotta, if you can beat this, I'm gonna tell you. I think USTR's first objective should be to establish trade principles that are not protectionist, that are not only about tariffs, trade principles that shows that we get an idea about what the bigger picture is on trade. Look to TPP when writing new trade deals. The decision, TPP, bingo, the decision to pull out of TPP, Kellie, right, Kellie, she should just tear up the bingo card this year. There's no relevance to it. The decision to pull out of TPP means that the U.S. is no longer setting the standards for issues that are important to us. TPP is a modern, high-standard trade agreement because it addressed issues that had not been addressed before. SOEs, digital trade, IPR. It had important environment and labor agreements in the text of the deal. And thinking of trade with only a transactional lens that is only about tariffs, as we seem to be doing now, is a very 80s viewpoint. And by 80s, I mean the 1880s. I'm not trying to make a snarky joke here, although it is. But it is true. The tariff levels that the administration is talking about were common in the 1880s. We have advanced beyond that, and we need to get beyond that when we talk about trade. TPP was also a multilateral deal, and I know the administration expressed favoring bilaterals over multilaterals. I think that's a mistake. The entire world is much more connected. Supply chains are much more connected. Bilaterals usually grow up to be multilaterals, so we should just get there. Second, I would argue it's harder to negotiate bilaterals because you can't use the coalition of other countries as leverage to get what you want, simply. And finally, negotiating only bilaterals sets up a system of winners and losers that will not get the U.S. very far diplomatically. So I'll cut to some of the chase here because I want to hear what Jeff has to say in rebuttal. But I do want to point out that the United States created a system after World War II that we should remain committed to, that we should continue to sustain, and that we should continue to lead. When it comes to establishing the rules of trade and being a global leader in setting those rules, the United States should not give that up. It concerns me that we seem to be stepping back from that somewhat, and I think that should concern all of us. For these reasons, I'll be following the NAFTA renegotiations closely. These negotiations will send a very clear message to how this administration will approach trade. Will we set the rules on labor, SOEs, environment, digital trade, cross-border trade and services, or will we focus only on tariff levels and on win-lose situations? I want to finish my remarks on what I do support about the trade agenda in this administration. Trade enforcement needs to be on top of the list, and the administration is going to put that on top of the list. It is important. Trade deals should be enforced, or they're not really trade deals. All countries involved with trade deals should uphold their end of the bargain or face challenges. And I help support legislation to create a trust fund to pay for enforcement actions against other countries breaking trade rules. And I think it's very important that we tell the American public and show the American public that we're willing to enforce trade agreements. So I hope the administration sees the value and the bigger picture on trade, the picture that I get to see every day in my district. So with that, I want to thank WITA for both supporting public television and public radio, as well as the honor of being recognized this year. Thank you very much.